So this is what it feels like to be 6'7". Thank you guys for opening your home. I know it's a big trauma to have 150 people come, but these are 150 very well-behaved people. I can't vouch for the press, but but thank you guys for having me, and I appreciate it very much. It's really an honor to be here, and to be a part of this. Actually, almost hard to imagine, and we'll talk about that in a moment. Suffice it to say, I appreciate your statement that I have been told by some people, you know, why don't you wait? You know, you could be the candidate of the future. And my answer is, well, that's good news because this election's in the future. So I'm excited to be a part of it. I'm running for president really because I think we're on the verge of another American century. I believe with all my heart that the 21st century is going to be better than the 20th if we do a few important things. By the way, that's to say a lot because the 20th century was an extraordinary time. It was the American century. You look back to the turn of the 19th century, America was an undeveloped country. America was a nation that was very few people, and Great Britain was the great power on earth. That generation of Americans decided they had a choice to make. They could either resist the future or they could embrace industrialization, and they embraced it, and it was disruptive. It moved millions of people from farms into factories, from rural areas into cities. It created all sorts of issues, but it also created all sorts of opportunity. Because of that decision, less than 100 years later, America had become the leading industrial power on the planet, and our nation had become the most powerful one on earth. The 20th century was known as the American century because twice in the last century, not once, but twice, the American people were called upon to save the world from evil. They defeated Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan, and then defeated the evil of communism during the Cold War. It was also known as the American century because it gave birth to what we now call the American dream. An American dream I know well, not because I read about it in a book, but because I saw it in my own home. My parents were born into poor families in Cuba, into a society like most of the societies that have ever existed, where your future was decided for you by the circumstances of your birth. Imagine for a moment living in a society that tells you no matter how hard you work or how talented you are, you're only going to be allowed to go as far as your parents went before you. And so my parents in 1956, after struggling for years to get ahead, decided to come here. It was the country they admired because they had seen it save the world. And it was a country they wanted to be a part of because they knew it was the only place on earth where people like them could have a chance. They worked hard, they persevered. Here in America, they never became rich, they never became famous. But working as a bartender and as a maid, my parents were successful because they owned a home in a safe and stable neighborhood, because they had jobs that helped them provide for their families, because they retired with dignity and security, and because they left all four of their children better off than themselves. It reminds us that the American dream was never and is not now about how much money you make or how many things you own. It's about the ability to achieve happiness and leave your children better off than yourself. And that was at the core of what made the 20th century the American century. Now in this new century, a growing number of Americans are starting to wonder if we're still that kind of country. They feel that way because every day on the news there's reports about how evil is winning somewhere. Whether it's ISIS in the Middle East, Iran, Putin, or China, every single day brings news of some new progress being made by the enemies of freedom, and the sense that somehow our country can no longer do what it once did to stop it or influence it. And then here at home, domestically, there's real insecurity. The millions of people that work day to day, and they live paycheck to paycheck, working as hard as they ever have, but they know they're one unexpected expense away from disaster. Or the college students that went to school and they got a degree and now they have a bunch of student loans, but they can't find a job in the field they studied for. Or what about the people that are trying so hard to start a small business, maybe out of the spare bedroom of their home, but they can't because rules and regulations and big government are keeping them down, to the point where today, for the first time in 35 years, we have more small business deaths than small business births. The result is of this international insecurity, and here at home, is that now whether America will remain a special country is in doubt in the minds of millions of our Americans, and it reminds us that the election of 2016 will not simply be a choice between Republicans and Democrats. It'll be the fundamental question about what country do we want to be in this new century. And if we want it to be, it can be special. This century can be better than the 20th century. The American dream doesn't just have to survive. It can extend and touch more lives than ever before. But to do so, we must walk away from leaders that are trapped in yesterday and their economic policies, and leaders who have forgotten the lessons that history teaches us about America's role in the world. First, when it comes to history's lessons about America, it's simply this. When America is weaker, the world is less safe. And all around the world today, you see evidence of it. In the Middle East, Radical Sunni Islam, in the name of ISIS and before that Al-Qaeda, continues to make progress across North Africa, in every country in the Middle East, extending into Afghanistan, Pakistan, and now even Indonesia. Meanwhile, Iran is moving forward on its nuclear ambitions and its desires for hegemonic influence in that region. And our strongest ally is under duress from all sides as Israel faces the true risk of being attacked and potentially destroyed by an Iranian nuclear weapon. In the South China Sea, where 70% of global commerce goes through, that means our products that we export have to go through there. China is building artificial islands to basically control that part of the world. In Europe, Putin is trying to relitigate the end of the Cold War. If we had leaders that understood that it takes American action to bring together our allies to collectively confront these challenges, then the world would be safer and more stable. Not perfect, but better. Because without American action, we will never bring together our allies in Asia to confront the spread of Chinese influence. We will never be able to confront Putin without a strong NATO, and we will never be able to defeat radical Islam or Iran's hegemonic ambitions. That's what's happening on the international stage. And if we do what needs to be done, the world will be stable, more prosperous, and you will have millions of people on this planet that can afford to buy the products we make and the services we offer and the things that we export. Here at home, we need policies that understand that the 21st century economy is radically different than the economy we leave behind. For starters, we're engaged in a global competition, a massive one, with dozens of other developed economies who want the innovations and investments that once made us the envy of the world. And we have fiscal policies in this country that are making us uncompetitive. That's why we need tax reform, so that we can become the friendliest place in the world to invest and innovate. That's why we need regulatory reform, so that it's easier, not harder, to start a business. That's why we need to bring our debt under control, because we don't want people scared about America confronting a debt crisis in the near future. That's why we need to fully utilize our energy resources, not just to create jobs in energy, and not just to be energy independent, but because it will help bring manufacturing to America again by lowering the cost of energy in America. Beyond that, we have leaders that don't understand that the skills of the 21st century are dramatically different from those in the 20th. It is true that machines have replaced many of the jobs that once sustained our middle class. And all you have to do is go to a grocery store or increasingly a McDonald's, and you will see a touchscreen device doing what a person once did. That's the bad news. The good news is that the 21st century will create new jobs to replace the old ones, and these new jobs will pay more than the old ones. But a lot of our people don't have the skills they need for those new jobs. And that's why we need our high schools to start graduating students ready to go to work as welders and electricians and plumbers and tradesmen. We need people to do this work. These are good paying jobs. And somehow we've told people that they're demeaning jobs, and that nothing could be further from the truth. We need more vocational training in our high schools. That's why we need flexibility in higher education, so people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s can go back to school while they still work full-time and raise their family, and acquire the skills they need for a better paying job. So that single mother who's a receptionist making $12 an hour can become a paralegal making $60,000 a year. So the home health aide making $9 an hour can become a dental hygienist making $65,000 a year. And last but not least, we need to reform traditional higher education. We cannot continue to graduate people from school with a mountain of debt and degrees that do not lead to jobs. And that's why I propose that before anyone takes out a student loan, the school has to tell you how much people make when they graduate from that school with that degree, so you can decide whether you should borrow tens of thousands of dollars to major in basket weaving. My apologies to the basket weaving industry. Having a strong people means one more thing, by the way, and one that we don't talk enough about. And that is, you can't have a strong country without strong people. You can't have strong people without strong values. No one is born with the values of hard work and discipline and self-control and respect for others. Those values are taught to you. They are taught to you in the most important institution in society, and that is the family. And we have leaders who now believe that our laws can replace values and our government can replace parents, and they cannot. The single leading cause of poverty in America today is the destruction and the breakdown of American families and the institutions that support them, like our churches and synagogues and voluntary community groups. And no government policy should be anti-family or anti-religion or anti-faith or anti-community group. And in fact, when we can, without interfering unnecessarily, our policies should strengthen those. Because you cannot have a strong society without strong people. You can't have strong people without strong values, and you can't have strong values without a strong families in our country. If we do these things, If we strengthen our people, strengthen our economy, and re-engage in the world, there is no reason why the 21st century can't be better than the 20th. There's no reason why this new century can't also be an American century. But it will require us to walk away from the leaders and the ideas of yesterday and move forward to the promise and the opportunity of tomorrow. I love the 20th century. I was born in the 20th century. The last time my beloved Miami Dolphins were any good was the 20th century. The 20th century's over. We're proud of our history, but we should be excited about our future, for it has the potential to be the greatest era in the extraordinary story of America. But now you and I, this generation, is called to do what those generations before us did. Confront the challenges and embrace the extraordinary opportunities of a new time. And if we do, we are on the verge of the most exciting time to ever live in this country and in the world. And we should thank God for this opportunity. Beyond that, for me, it's a personal debt. You see, America owes me absolutely nothing. But I have a debt to America I will never be able to repay. America is not simply the country I was born in. It's the nation that literally changed the history of my family. Up until 2 to 3 decades ago, my family was largely poor people that worked very hard for little pay. But then America gave my parents an opportunity to do something no one in their family had ever done in recent memory. The chance to open doors for their children that had been closed for them. The very purpose of my parents' life became to give us the chance to do all the things they never could. They didn't care if I became a politician, a football coach, whatever I decided to do, but they wanted me to be able to live whatever dream I had. And they taught me from a young age how blessed I was to be a citizen of the one place on earth where even the son of a bartender and a maid could have the same dreams and the same future as the children of millionaires and presidents and people connected to power. Those of us who have lived that dream, which is virtually every single one of us in this room, if not all of us, have, I believe, a moral and patriotic obligation to ensure that those who are trying to achieve it now still can. The question of whether or not America remains special will not be determined by how many rich people we have, because every country has rich people. The question of whether we remain a special country will be determined by whether people can do for their children today what our parents did for you and me. Whether the people that clean our homes and drive our trucks and service our cars, the people who get up at 5 a.m. to do the first of 2 jobs they will do that day so their kids have the chance to do all the things they never could. If the American dream is in reach for them, this remains a special country unlike any other in human history. And if they cannot, we have become just another place. I know which future we will choose. And the question is when we will choose it. Because the longer we wait, the more people we will leave behind. The time to choose it is right now. And if we do, then you and I will go down in history as the generation that not just saved the American dream, but expanded it to reach more people and change more lives than ever before. And we will leave for our children what every generation of Americans before has left for theirs, the single greatest nation in the history of all mankind. So I appreciate you coming for me here today. I hope I can convince you to caucus for me. If you are, I hope you can get engaged in our campaign by going on our website. It's a hard one to remember, so try to write it down, marcorubio.com. If you go on there, you can click to all of our social media platforms. We are going to be here often. We want to win the caucuses in this state. We want to do well. We're going to be here often to deal and interact with people. We want to meet all your friends, all your family, everyone in your neighborhoods that is willing and open-minded about voting for us. We want to earn the support because we're excited that we are on the verge of another American century. Thank you. Thank you for having me.